Okay, welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report to Say Roundup, and we have joining us tonight Susan Lindauer, who has a book out that you should read. It's called Extreme Prejudice, the terrifying story of the Patriot Act and the cover-ups of 9/11 and Iraq. And Susan, you mentioned the New York Times, and we should always remember that the New York Times, of course, had Judy Miller as one of the chief propagandists for the neocons and putting out all the false information, of course, about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and other things.
That's right. That's right. They have a long history of inventing intelligence and inventing a perspective that is not in the best interest of the people of the United States.
Absolutely not. And then you were sent down to Air Force Base in Texas without a trial. Air Force Base. Right. And why don't you talk a little bit?
Let me explain to your audience how this happened. First of all, I was on the Patriot Act, so I was subjected to secret charges, secret evidence, secret grand jury tests. I was not allowed to know. I could guess, but I was not allowed to officially know who had accused me or what they had accused me of doing. I was not even told the dates that the events occurred. Okay. I was declared incompetent. When I asked for a trial, they knew that I was quite adamant. I had no intention of pleading guilty. There was no possibility that was going to happen. So I said, drop the charges or go to trial. I said, this is ridiculous. You owe me an apology. I've worked so hard in anti-terrorism for years. I'm one of the people who warned about 9/11. You need to either make this thing go away or go to trial. So what they did was they had a secret attorney debriefing at the Justice Department. We only learned about this after my case ended, and my old attorney sent some papers to me, and I looked through the papers and I found this document for the classified non-disclosure agreement. Apparently they had a secret attorney debriefing 3 weeks before I was declared incompetent to stand trial. Okay. Then I was just told, show up in court. Just come to court. And I said, well, why am I coming to court? I'm under indictment. Of course, if the judge wants me to be there, I'm going in. But I would like to know what's going on. And my attorney said, I have no idea. I get into court, and in Judge Mukasey says, Susan Lindauer, we've decided what to do with your case. You are going to prison. I said, well, wait a minute. I want a hearing. I want a trial. You can't just do this to me. This is America.
Yes, whatever happened to one stay in court, right?
Yeah, this is America. You can't just throw me into jail. They said, if you demand a hearing, okay, here's what they said, that I could have a hearing, not a trial, a hearing, after I completed the prison sentence. But that if I demanded to have a hearing before the prison sentence, then I would be seized immediately, and I would forfeit my bail or any right to bail consideration until the end of the proceeding, which could be a long time.
Right,
okay?
right.
And I had an uncle with me who had 40 years of legal experience, and he said, Susan, you better accept the prison psychiatric evaluation, because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to send me down to Carswell Air Force Base and a women's prison inside the military base, which is incidentally where John Kennedy died. For all of you who are curious about the John Kennedy connection, I actually walked in the footsteps of Jackie Kennedy. That's where they took John Kennedy after the shooting in Dallas with Carswell Air Force Base.
Okay.
So I'm down there, and originally supposed to be there for 4 months for a psychiatric evaluation that usually takes 6 weeks. Usually it's very fast, because if you're incompetent, then you're like, say you're schizophrenic or something like that. They can tell the minute you walk in the door. This is just not ambiguous. Okay? There's just, if you're really incompetent, then anybody would be capable of seeing that. You would not be conversational. You might have Alzheimer's disease. I met somebody there who had Alzheimer's disease. She was incompetent. But it's much more. Incompetence is just very difficult to prove. To begin with, I mean,
just for the record, because I know we have a lot of listeners who are experts in the Kennedy assassination. He was taken to Parkland, and then he was taken to Carswell for the flight back, and this is where maybe a second autopsy may have been performed before he reached Bethesda.
Oh yes.
Okay. Now. Of course, this use of psychiatrists, people I know who are whistleblowers at the National Security Agency face the same issue where they were subjected to NSA psychologists and psychiatrists who apparently, now we find out some of them didn't even have degrees. They just used the title. And this harkens back to the Soviet Union's use of psychiatrists to declare people insane who were, questioning the Soviet government, and it's the hallmark of a dictatorship to misuse psychiatrists. We also know the CIA was using psychiatrists in the torture of detainees. So here we have just another example of this gross violation of human rights using these psychiatrists.
Well, and I'll tell you something. I am not a passive person. To be an asset, you have to be just let me toot my own horn here for a minute. Assets are not passive people. I didn't just roll over and take this. When I got there, I had witnesses telephoning the prison, confronting the prison staff, saying, Susan is telling you the truth. She was an asset, and the 9/11 warning is authentic.
Right.
And these are very credible people who were doing this. And, my witnesses included one of the defense attorneys for the Lockerbie trial, in a major international terrorism case. He was willing to fly in at his own expense and stay in New York and wait for my trial and testify for me.
Case he didn't want it would open up too many cans of worms.
Yes, exactly. That was another can of worms, so that we would reopen Lockerbie.
Absolutely.
I had such a strong corroborating testimony, and what they did was they falsified This is very important for the Patriot Act, because I've already told you that there's secret charges and secret evidence, but there's something else apparently on the Patriot Act that should send shivers down your spine, in my opinion. The Patriot Act allows them to deny what's called exculpatory knowledge. If you confirm that somebody's innocent of a charge, that they did like, for example, if somebody robs a bank, or is accused of robbing a bank, and then you find out that somebody else has confessed to it, or somebody else's fingerprints are there, or the person was really 500 miles away, you were required to tell the defense and the court. You were required to admit this to the court. But in the Patriot Act, if it's considered classified evidence, you don't have to tell them anything. So what I was doing was I was going to the judge, and I was like, by this time, they sent me to prison for 4 months and refused to release me. They said, we changed our mind. We want to detain you for up to 10 years with no trial, no hearing, no guilty plea. And we want to forcibly drug you because you keep telling the judge this very inconvenient truth that you warned about 9/11. Now, the facts are they knew that I had done it. The FBI knew it. The U.S. Attorney's Office knew it. Attorney General's Office, Justice of Counterterrorism, the CIA knew it. The Defense Intelligence Agency knew it. And the Bureau of Prisons learned about it when I was there. Everybody knew it was true. But they tried to forcibly drug me. They argued for the right to do that.
Right.
And they did it on the basis of this horrible rule in the Patriot Act, which is yet one more reason why this thing has got to be repealed. Even if you're innocent, they don't have an obligation to admit it. And that's terrible. Even if they know you didn't do it, they have no obligation to say that we got to, she's right, she's telling you the truth.
Right. Susan, we have some callers. Would you be willing to take a few calls?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to Jeff, and it was calling from Chicago. Jeff, are you on the line?
Hi, Wayne. Hey, Susan. This is Jeff Black in Chicago.
Hey there.
Hey, Susan. I got your email the other day. I want to thank you so much for that. I want to just say, Wayne, that as you know, we've had discussions about how to gauge how sincere a person is. And if you guys remember the Warner Brothers cartoon where Bugs Bunny is saying, "Look, he's not in the oven. If he was in the oven, would I put the lighter in there?" And you know, Susan, you strike me after hearing more and more about what you went through. I have to say that what I'm facing here in Chicago as Rahm Emanuel, objector number 11, there's nothing that happened to you that I am not vulnerable to experiencing now. And I want to say again, Wayne, that I do love you, and I love you very much, Susan. So, Susan, I've misplaced the email that you sent me. Can I have a public email right now to send you information about the mayor campaign here?
Or what you could do is send it to me, and send me your email, and I'll get you.
It's gone. Excellent.
I would love to get it. I'd love to get it. Just I just send it to Wayne right now. Send it to me. No problem.
Yeah, so here's the question for both of you. To your knowledge, Susan, was Carol Moseley Braun the head of the Mossad at any point, or did her father blow up the King David Hotel, or did she force NAFTA on us, or any of that good stuff?
What? Oh, no, I don't know anything about head in the Mossad. Carol Moseley Braun is one of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life. I think that the Mossad would have her because I don't think she's very bright.
Well, we know about Rahm Emanuel's father being involved in that, certainly. But thanks for calling in from Chicago, Jeff. And let's go to Lou in Michigan. Lou, are you on the line? Hello, Lou.
Yes, I would like to ask Wayne and Susan Lindauer, are either of you familiar with Carolyn Reagan, who has been the guest of Deanna Spagnola on RBN recently in the last couple of months here?
I am not, no.
You know, Carolyn Reagan...
doesn't she have a radio show herself?
On RBN, yes, and she's had a couple of times as her guest recently, a woman called Carolyn Reagan. Now, I would like to give you guys an opportunity to respond. What Carolyn Reagan says is that Wayne Madsen is a disinformationalist. He's a product of a couple of left-wing socialist parents. And when I'm hearing Wayne Madsen defend these unionists in Wisconsin demanding continued high wages for union employees.
No, they're only demanding the right to arbitrate, and collective bargaining is all they're asking for. The Koch brothers are trying to stamp out the unions, and they're funding it with millions and millions of dollars.
I have to think, though, that I just wonder, you know, when I hear people supporting these union, basically socialist union worker movements where they want, you know, these continued inflated wages for their members. It's called a living wage.
Well, I want to answer the question of disinformation because I want to tell you something about Wayne Madsen. Wayne Madsen was one of the very, very first people who showed up to question, to hear my story firsthand. He wasn't taking anybody's word for anything. I had been smeared to high heaven, and he was willing to hear it for himself. And that is everything. He refused to be a disinformationalist. Everybody else was. The New York Times had just ripped me, and the mainstream AP had ripped me, and he wanted to see evidence. He wanted to hear me. He wanted to look me in the eye. And that is the mark of a real journalist.
Well, okay. Well, let's go quickly to Byron in Canada. Byron, are you on the line?
Yeah. Hey, Susan, I want to ask you a question. You were talking about you had all this information on the hijacking or on 9/11. Where was you getting it? Where was you getting your information from on these on these hijackings that was supposed to be taking place? Like, where were you getting that from?
My CIA contact, Dr. Richard Fuse. It's a very good question. I was summoned to his office in April of 2001, and I was ordered to deliver a message to the diplomats at the United Nations for Baghdad and to tell them that we were looking for intelligence on a conspiracy involving airplane hijackings. By June that had been amended to airplane hijackings and a strike on the World Trade Center. And I just remember we talked about it every single week. We had, Richard Fuse and I had weekly meetings, and we talked about this practically every time we met. We were convinced it was going to happen. It's actually based on something called Project Bojinka. And if you want to, let me spell that for you guys if you're curious about researching it on the internet. Bojinka. Project Bojinka was conceived by Ramzi Youssef, who was the mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center attack, when he was in the Philippines in hiding. And when they arrested him, they cracked open the Philippine police cracked open his computer, and they found this. And it was exposed at his trial in, I'm going to say 1997, but double check that. And this had been a scenario that had been mapped out. NORAD had trained for it for 2 years. They had, this was a well-identified conspiracy, and so it was really a question of now they were going to put it into play. Now, I realize that some people don't believe that there really were hijackings, and that's a different, it's a little bit different question because, what I can tell you is, I have to be straight with you. I mean, what we talked about was airplane hijacking, and the conspiracy of 9/11 as it unfolded publicly to the people in the presentation is exactly what we perceived it to be. It was what we expected.
Susan,
it was precisely what we expected.
As far as the plane hijackings, they were talking in the middle of the 90s. I remember on CNN, Fox News, there was Cliff May. There was another name, Kenneth Pollard. They were talking about flying planes in the Sears Towers and other things, the way that they could strike us. So these flying in the planes in the buildings, that was nothing new. I mean, just some old farmer out here in Canada had heard about that probably in the middle of the 50s. I just want to get back to one statement you made about this Ramzi Youssef. You do know that that group of people that blew up the towers, or tried to blow the towers up in '93, that there was an informant. His name was
okay. Hold on with that thought, Byron. We have a break, and we'll be right back with Susan Lindauer and your calls right after this short break. This is Wayne Madsen from Washington.